We will see.
So people will come into the room, the virtual room.
So, well,
Exactly.
hello everyone. We are opening the room for today's webinar. I will ask Ricarda to welcome you as the moderator of today's session.
Hello, good morning, everybody. I would like to welcome you very much to the webinar on inclusion on stage, talking about a Zambian theater case. My name is Ricarda Mucilnik. I am the moderator of the session. I'm going to be guiding you through the next hour. I am the Policy and Advocacy Officer for the International Council for Adult Education, ICAE. And we are going to start in about 6 minutes, officially. So, in the meantime, and we are going to start. Okay, I can hear myself now. Okay, now. We're going to be starting in 5 minutes. And so in the meantime, you are kindly invited to introduce yourself in the chat. On your right-hand side, you can see a little chat window where I've already typed in the welcome words and my name, my introduction. So please introduce yourself. Let the other people in the online room know who you are, where you're from, what your background is, whatever you want to share with us. We will start in approximately 5 minutes. Oh, Selina is here as well. Lovely.
Hi, Selina.
Hello. You have changed the room, I can see.
Yes, I thought this one would be better.
Perfect.
Okay, okay.
Lovely. And we can hear you very well. That's
All
lovely.
right. Okay, so can I?
Yeah, lovely. Cool. So we have another 4 minutes. And what I can see, so far we have Ruth being here as participant. Hello, Ruth. That's our colleague from DVV International. All of you know.
Okay.
Ruth, yes. And yes, we will see, or we hope that more people are going to be joining us in the next 4 minutes.
Have you managed to contact Daniel?
Well, he has received the link, the same link as you have received.
Yes.
So, but we didn't hear anything from him in the meantime. He sent me a message about an hour ago that he was trying to connect on Monday or so, but it seems that he's not well. An hour ago?
He's no, yeah, he was in hospital. He was discharged yesterday.
Okay. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope he's feeling better.
Yes, he is much better.
Okay.
Hello, Selina. I'm Astrid.
Hello, Astrid. Astrid, how are you?
I'm all right, and you? Welcome from Southern Africa.
Well, welcome from Zambia.
Selina, are you involved in theatre too?
Yes, in a way, because I teach this as a course, Theatre for Development.
Okay.
It's undergraduate, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you know the work, the early work of ZAOU Mda?
Who?
ZAOU Mda. He's a South African, MDA.
Yes. I've read some of his works, yes.
Yeah.
I've read to him in some of the assignments that I've done.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
because he has a new book out.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Justify the
you
enemy.
might want to look out for it.
Okay, 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 okay.
And it is about, there's quite a lot about his early theatre work in it. I don't know if you know his novels.
Okay. So it looks like you got an interest in theatre for development. Have you read the book?
The Theatre for Development, the kid one.
This one, Justify the Enemy.
I know I've read some of it, not all of it. And it's not all about, you know, he writes novels a lot. So it's about, and he lives in the United States now, but it includes, you know, considerations and thinking around theatre for development.
All right, all right.
Maybe what I should do is photocopy the pages that are relevant for you and send them to you.
That will be appreciated. Yes, please do.
Yeah, no, I'll do that.
That's how international exchange starts or works nowadays. Yeah, it's actually 9 o'clock now. I am seeing that we have not many additional persons joining us now. What's of course a pity. But either way, I think we should start because this webinar is actually being recorded as well. And we have quite a number of people who were or who are interested in the webinar, but maybe they are not able to join us right now live. So as this webinar is being recorded, it will be disseminated and spread afterwards. So,
all right.
So let's get us started. As I mentioned already, I'm gonna be saying a few introductory words. So I am the Policy and Advocacy Officer for ICAE and for International Council for Adult Education, guiding you through the webinar, which will be approximately 45 minutes, an hour, we will see. And this is a global webinar. We have invited participants from all over the world. And so, as I mentioned, it's being recorded, so you can send the link, we forward the link of the recording afterwards, use it through social media and whatever way you want to spread the word. In this framework, I also, first of all, want to thank my colleague Sebastian Wilmers. He's my colleague at the International Council for Adult Education, and he's the membership officer there, sitting in Canada, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning now. So thank you so much. Well, I know he's a night person, but still, thanks a lot for supporting me and supporting us here, in particular from the technical side.
It's a pleasure, Ricarda, and I want to remind everyone that we are also broadcasting through Facebook.
Yes, so we are live on Facebook now, so yes. We hope that we will be reaching a very wide audience here now. As mentioned, this webinar is organized by ICAE and DVV International, and for those of you who don't know ICAE, it's a global network advocating for youth and adult learning and education. We are representing around 800 NGOs, 7 regional bodies in 75 countries. So, and if you want to read up more about ICAE, I'm going to be posting the website in the chat. Yes, so in this webinar is organized in the framework of a virtual seminar, which takes place every year. It has been running through the whole month of March on the topic of inclusion and diversity. And quite a lot of people have joined this seminar. There have been loads of interesting discussions, inspiring conversations. And you can read up all the articles which have been posted and discussed during this month on the website. We will be receiving a few more articles and contributions until the end of the week. So also the website is still open, so it's you can read it up at any time. And this virtual seminar is based on 4 articles from the DVV International Journal, Adult Education and Development. And this journal can be subscribed to as well. And I'm posting the subscription links in the chat here as well. So DVV International Journal, Adult Education and Development. Yeah, and one of these articles was written by Danielle Mpolomoka and Selina Banda. We are very glad to welcome Selina here. Selina is the lecturer in the Department of Adult Education at the Zambian Open University. She's lecturing on adult literacy, theater for development, and home economics. She has taught for 19 years in government schools, and her PhD is in literacy and development. So, and she will be presenting and discussing here her article, which she has written together with Daniel on the topic of inclusion on stage, a Zambian theater case. And before I hand over to Selina, I also want to introduce Astrid. Astrid from Kotze, she is based in South Africa, and she will be commenting and giving an input on the topic of theater education, theater on stage as well. Her background is in adult education and community education. She's working on a popular education program and traditions of popular education, a research project also in the framework of the University of Western Cape, South Africa. But you can tell us more about yourself, maybe at the beginning of your contribution, of your input. And before I hand over to Selina, I want to invite our participants to send us questions or post your questions in the chat. The chat room is on your right-hand side. So just type in your questions to Selina and Astrid there. So these were my short introductory words, and I want to hand over to Selina now. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. Yes, Daniel and I wrote an article entitled Inclusion on Stage, a Zambian Theatre Case. This article is one of the articles that advocates for participation of people at the grassroots in their own development. And we thought that using some case studies, we'll be able to identify or explain how theater for development is being used, because there are groups that, well, for lack of a better term, maybe to claim that they use theater for development, yet in the real sense, we find that they are not using theater for development the way it is supposed to be used. That's how come we referred to 4 case studies. So we looked at theater for development is one of the tools that we're supposed to use in any development venture meant for the people to make it participatory. And the up with indicates that these groups that are involved in theater for development do not adhere to the tenets on which theater for development is based. This means that they are not participatory, and they focus only on entertainment. Maybe because the people that are involved are not trained in the use of theater for development. As a result, they focus on only maybe monetary gain when they get involved. That's what they look for. And the focus is also on entertainment. it just becomes a spectacle, and at the end of the day, people either just focus on entertainment and do not get the education that they need. So doing that, we found that people are not being liberated. That's how come we decided to write this paper. And looking at the outcome of what theater is supposed to be, we thought that it was appropriate actually to discuss in our paper the uses of theater, which basically that the people are supposed to determine actually what it is that they want, so that they mirror it, on a stage, and everyone can associate themselves with what is being staged. But what happens in reality is that it is a top-down approach that is being used. The people that determine what they put on a stage do not get to know what the people really want. They just kind of impose on the people. So that's how come we thought that we need to bring this out, so that maybe as institutions of higher learning, we are not just supposed to maybe teach maybe people those that go to school. We need to also provide maybe some kind of non-formal education to these theater groups, so that they can know also how to conduct theater for development. Even as they are engaged by their sponsors, those that sponsor messages, they should know how to do it and get the people involved from the grassroots, so that when they leave the communities, the people get the education that they require, and that even as they leave, they can remain using those skills to enhance their own development. Basically, that's what this paper is all about.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you so much, Selina. I have to say I really enjoyed reading your article, because also it gave you a feeling how theater looks like in Zambia, and gave really very practical examples. Mm-hmm. And we already received actually a question through email to you, and I want to be reading out this question to you. It's from Sarah Longwe, and she asked, so whether you talked to the community theater groups, and if yes, what did they hope to gain from their performances with regard to the perceptions of their audience? So what did they hope to gain with regard of the perceptions of the audience, especially if the main attendees are children? Sarah asks this because when she thinks that when community theater is performed, there's no selection of age group of the audiences, and the plays are not censored either. So I think she refers to, what happens if children are sitting in the audience. Do you have any experience with this, Selina?
Yes, because the community usually is composed of people of different ages. So we do not we do not choose who is supposed to be in the audience or not, because it's meant to develop the community members. Yes, but because these sponsored theater activities that are taken to the communities are focused mainly on entertainment and not educating the members of the community. That's how come you find that mainly there will be children that will be in the audience, because the adults will think that it's not meant for them, it's just for entertainment and not really educating them. Yeah. Otherwise, if the community members were involved as the way theater is supposed to be done, they are supposed to discuss with the community members, identify the problems that they are facing, and then that's what is supposed to be staged. Then the community members will own that activity, and they will even want to contribute. But in this case, it just comes from outside and imposed on them. And when it comes like that, it just becomes like just a spectacle. And that's what attracts mainly the children and not the adults, who are supposed to be responsible mainly for development in the communities.
Okay.
Can I say something about that?
Exactly. I just wanted to bring you in. Perfect timing. Yeah.
I just want to describe an experience that we had. We had a performance that focused on domestic violence, and all our plays are developed by we don't work with actors, we work with community members. They make their own play. We facilitate the process of making the play. So they're very much, it's bottom up, and they're very much talking about what's at the center of their everyday life and kind of the central conflict. So they made this play about domestic violence, and in that play there was a scene where the woman gets beaten up. Now, we don't make it very graphic, it's very much more symbolic, but there is some shouting. And of course, as Sarah was asking about what about the children in the audience, and I must say that at the first performance we hadn't explicitly considered it. We hadn't thought about what's going to happen when the children watch it. And what really happened is that there were lots of children in the audience, and as this sort of wife-beating scene was evolving, or in fact it was just at the shouting stage, some children jumped up and ran to the back of the audience, which is a very clear indication they identified so strongly, they know exactly what this is about, and they were very frightened.
Yeah.
And others saw it in the way that Selina describes as entertainment, and they laughed. But of course it's that uneasy laughter. But for us, it was an incredibly interesting moment, because we suddenly had to confront the fact that we will always have lots of children in the performances, and what are we going to do about it? How are we going to catch them? How are we going to make this scene kind of safe enough so they don't feel like they're reminded of home in a way that they don't want to be reminded, in a way that we can't deal with it, if you want. And we changed the scene.
Okay.
So I think the reality, there was another play, we'd invited a street theater company from India, and they had a rape scene in their play. Very symbolic, very, very symbolic. They just had red kind of flag things, and they enacted it very, very symbolically. But the children got it. And again, ethical question arose, and saying, how far can you go? How far is far enough? Because it is a real problem, and you can't keep on hiding it just because, let's say, culturally it's inappropriate to talk about sex and violent sex. And how far do you actually have to show it? Because it's the only way that you can raise the discussion and then maybe move on. It's a huge tension. I don't know what you think about it, Selina. I mean, sex generally. So if you make a play about HIV/AIDS, do you just talk about it symbolically? How far do you go? And how far is far enough, but not too far?
Okay. I think, like I said, if you involve members of the community in the theatrical activity, they will, of course, know what it is that they want to be depicted, so that it suits them. Like you mentioned that the audience identified with the activities that were staged. So the facilitators, you are a facilitator there, and the community members are supposed to come to an agreement on what is supposed to be stage so that they do not scare away certain members of the community. But the idea is to bring out issues in the community that concern them, so that at the end of the day, they come up with a solution to the problems that they are facing. What you've explained, that you just facilitated, community members got involved, that is very good. That is how Theatre for Development is supposed to be conducted. Yes. So involvement of the community in all the stages of Theatre for Development will always result in something that concerns the community, and everything that will be done will not be so strange to them. So even if there's issues that are so sensitive, the community members will come in and say, no, we have a culture, and this is not supposed to be depicted because it's going to expose maybe some members of the community to things that they're not supposed to know.
Okay.
But they do know.
They don't know, but things that they concern them, but maybe they've not reached a stage in their lives where they're supposed to maybe be exposed to them. So members of the community are supposed to also have a part, you know, they're supposed to control the activities. And like if it comes from outside, you just come and impose, then the development part is left out.
Mm-hmm. I was wondering, Astrid, you mentioned we. Who is we? Do you want to tell us maybe who are you working with, or who is we? And then my second question was, how did you handle the situation? Like you mentioned that the situation when the children were running to the back, and then, you know, in the second place you changed the setting and you changed the play. Did you change it together with the community, or how did you get the grasp?
Okay, so I work with different groups. This particular one were women, working class women, who've been long-term unemployed. They belong to a women's organization, and they had a course about health. And part of health was mental health, emotional health. And as part of that, they then said, no, they wanted to talk about domestic violence because it was such a big issue. And in the process of working around that, we decided we're going to make a play. So the learning that's happening within the group can then expressed as a story, and we can take it further, and it becomes an educational project. So over the process of about 4 or 5 weeks, we met regularly and we made this play. And it was workshop. There wasn't a script. Nobody came with a script. We evolved the script together. And it did, you know, involve moments of tears, because people were confronted with their experiences and found it very, very hard to talk about that. But the group together kind of held the process and literally physically held each other quite often. And I think we collectively agreed through working through it that some of the contradictions and tensions that are pretty ugly have to be shown, because the violence in the community has become naturalized. It's so natural, it's so normal that it is not questioned anymore, because that's life. You know, women get beaten up, and we just thought, and there's sexual violence as well, and it's also become normal, and we must show it as this is not normal. And so we've got to push a little bit further. So the tension was always about how far can you push, and how far is, far enough, but not too far. So they made the decision. So when I say we, it is basically 5 performers. 2 of them dropped out after a while, and 2 others replaced them. Why did they drop out? Not because of discomfort with the play, although one of the women was Muslim and her husband put some pressure on it. So there was a whole process in the process of coming to terms with some of the oppressions, I suppose. So let me just talk about the play, what we did with it. We then took it kind of on tour. We went and people performed in different communities, other members of the organization organized performances in different venues, very often church halls or something like that, of their communities, and also mobilize. So for them, it was also an experience of learning how to organize and mobilize an audience for this. And then we had the performance for about 20 minutes, and then afterwards there was a discussion. And within the performance, there were moments when the performers would talk to the audience and ask them questions and get responses. So it was a very interactive process. There were some extraordinary contradictions in this play. For example, the husband is shown, they start off with a love scene. And the questions that we had asked ourselves is, what happens to this love? Everybody, starts off having this wonderful romantic relationship, and then it goes sour. And we show how it goes sour, not because either of them is a bad person, but because they live in a very, very violent community, extremely violent community of shooting and gangs and drugs and whatever. And they have conversations around that. So I think we were at pains to always show the tension between an individual response to social economic conditions outside and how do you respond to that. So for example, when her husband beats her and she sports a black eye, she goes to the communal washing line and everybody kind of sniggers and gossips and is rather horrible to her. So we examine that and saying, the story of, haha, look at what happened to her, rather than saying, actually, this happened to me before, or actually, this happens to a lot of us. So how do we deal with those tensions and contradictions? But the biggest contradiction in that play was when she approaches the husband, who thinks she's now going to be extremely angry with him. She comes to him and she says, "Thank you for sweeping. When I was sitting at the clinic with a child this morning, and I came home and it was such a lovely thing to find the house clean." And that kind of turns things around. And in the process of workshopping that scene, we had talked amongst ourselves, how else could one approach situations like that? And then the women, the performers, went home and they tried out different solutions for 1 or 2 weeks. And they came back and they said, it's extraordinary, it's remarkable. The relationship in my home have changed. And so they realized the authenticity of this particular solution and then presented it in the play. And then obviously we presented it as something to discuss with the audience. How real is this? Can this really happen? But I think the main thing that we were so concerned with is to show that it is not individual bad people. Men don't beat because they're terrible, but men beat because maybe they're frustrated because they spend all day sitting by the side of the road, unemployed, and when they come home at night, the wife says, "Where's the money? How am I expected to cook something?" And the children say, "Where are the sleep?" So we really explored domestic violence as a facet of socioeconomic conditions outside. And the women told their own story of their own community and then played it to similar communities, similar audiences, and then turned from performer to educator by asking the questions and pushing. But I think what we're very concerned with is push further, not just tell people what they already know. They know that people get beaten up, but why is a question we don't ask.
Okay. So it's about, going one step further and delivering, it really seems very strong messages are being delivered there, and really like emotions can be...
Strong emotions, very strong emotions.
For the...
we've had men in the audience coming forward at the end of a performance saying, "You have shown me what I have done and I feel absolutely terrible, and I'm going to go home and I'm going to say, I'm sorry to my wife and mother."
Okay. Have you followed up?
Does it change a lot? It does change some things, and it has changed relationships. I was teaching in that community yesterday, a different kind of thing, and that group is growing and growing and growing. So something good is happening.
Selina, you also mentioned in your article the empowering factor theater and plays can have. You also mentioned quite a lot of examples. I was particularly impressed by this Chipata Jungle Theater, which already exists since the 80s, 1984. And coming back to the topic, this at the beginning were people from primary school. So do you want to tell us more about that? Or do you want to maybe even respond to, or do you want to respond to Astrid's example?
Yes, maybe to respond to Astrid, she's brought out issues that are critical in theater for development. You know, that's why, you know, theater for development involves research, education, and entertainment. So the first thing that is supposed to be done is for the facilitators, they need to initiate a research, go in the community development, find out what issues people have, and then educate them on how to bring them out. And that is now part of the education, so that they can know how they can bring out issues, that the burning issues, you know, and you know, some issues like domestic violence. Yes, culturally, some of these things we don't really want to talk about them, but they happen and they affect people very much. That's how come, you know, in theater for development, we encourage that we allow community members to talk about these issues. You know, there's what we call speaking across differences. The perpetrators actually of violence, for example, in communities would not even want to anyone maybe to talk about those issues, and you find that those that are the victims are silenced. So with the theater for development, before we come up with any play in whatever form, we allow the community members to talk about these issues, no matter how painful these issues can be. Some people can even cry out, they can express their emotions, so that at the end of the day, they will be able to understand one another, and will be able now to put them on the stage, and when they are mirrored there, they'll be able to identify themselves with those issues. So the whole idea is to bring people together, no matter how different they are. They should be able to see that they're coming up with something that is going to help them to solve problems that they are facing in the communities. And this they will do in form of one entertainment. And at the end of the day, after they've staged the play, then they're supposed to discuss those issues and come up with solutions. And that's exactly what Astrid has just presented to us. Contradictions are always there, but people are supposed to talk about them. And if there are contradictions that are not bringing development to people, we need to speak about them. And this can only be done through theater for development. Yes. Concerning yes.
Please continue.
Yes, you referred to one of the case studies. Which one was this? Was it the Cood Uprising Drama Group? Yeah. What I can say about these case studies, the members actually were just concerned with getting messages from their sponsors and with staging them to community members. So they were not really involving the community members in the manner they were supposed to have been involved. Like they were Astrid and I think her group have been involving the community members. But the examples that we gave, this was the extent to which the community members were involved was not much. They are supposed to have, they are supposed to involve the members in almost everything, so that when something is being staged, they own also the activity. Yes.
You described this a little bit like as a top-down approach, I think, at the beginning of your article.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before I have another question,
yes.
Ruth posted a question in the chat. She asks, are there any training facilities, schools in Zambia and or South Africa where members of theater groups can learn more about TFD? And yes, if you can tell something about that and their offers. So are there any training facilities or schools for TFD, for theater? Maybe Astrid first? Oh, Selina, yes, sorry.
Okay, like in Zambia, Theatre for Development is not part of the curriculum, so to say. But okay. The children maybe are only allowed to do what is called role play, maybe to depict what issues are in the community, so that they can be able to educate maybe the other members of the school. Like, for example, in Zambia, there was an issue of cholera. Maybe a few pupils can be selected to depict what cholera is all about, how it is treated in the communities. Really, there is no real training per se that is being conducted to train the children, but it is something that we should take seriously, because not many institutions of learning are offering theatre for development. Even at higher institutions of learning, this theatre for development is not taught. Actually, it's not even amongst what we teach, even to teachers that go to teach the children in schools. Now you brought in an issue of concern that there's need actually to maybe have this theatre for development as part of the courses that teachers are supposed to take, so that as they go out there, they are able to also teach the children theatre for development.
Okay. So you should, yeah, Astrid?
I don't know, is the honest answer. But I have my doubts. I think theatre for development is probably part of a curriculum for drama students. But out there for people who are theatre members, whether they can learn about theatre for development, I don't know. They're short courses, much more kind of focused on let's say, Augusto Boal and Forum Theatre, rather than theatre for development. Partially, I think, it has to do with two things. A, it has to do with funding. If people learn to do that, who are they going to work for? Who's going to pay them? Where are the jobs? Yeah. So that's the one thing. The other thing is, I think, attention that Selina brings out in her article so well, where she describes theatre groups that are there for hire. Now, a theatre group for hire is much like a mercenary, isn't it? You pay them and then they do what you tell them to do.
Yeah.
Now, that is very often a far away from education. So they can play clowns and they can entertain superbly, but that doesn't mean that they know actually the subject matter. And in my experience, I've done 2 plays about TB with very different groups. So the one play was with community caregivers, you know, people who kind of move from home to home and make sure that people take their TB treatment. And I must say that TB is hugely stigmatized because it is associated with HIV/AIDS. So people don't want to talk about it. And it is in fact a bigger killer than HIV/AIDS. It's the biggest disease in South Africa. And the other TB play I made was with a group of people who wanted to act. So it was like a theater group. And the tension and question behind it all the time was, do you work with, let's say, political or activists or actors, or do you work with educators? So what do? You're going to work with people who know a lot about, let's say, TB, but not so much about a theatrical story of TB, telling that story. Or you're going to work with people who know how to act, but they know very little about TB. And I think if your purpose is education, I think it's easier to teach people who know a lot about TB how to act and tell a story. Than to tell those people who are the mercenaries how to be a good educator, because very often they lack the subject knowledge. So when I think about the play, the performances that we did with the community healthcare workers, what was amazing is that the audience could afterwards ask questions, and they knew, because they know a lot about TB. So you had experts in the room who could answer the questions that people are often too scared or too hesitant or unable to ask when they see a health worker. And that was more useful than the good performers who actually couldn't give the answer to those questions.
Yeah.
So should there be training? I guess that's what I'm asking. The popular education program, the program I work with, I mean, we do, we make plays and people learn by making plays, by making them. But it's not a formal course. And we start off with an issue. So I'm working quite a lot with social movements. So they may have a housing issue and they say, let's make a short play and use it as a tool for telling the story and asking the question. Yeah.
I hope this, I'm sure this answered Ruth's question very well. Because, yes, Ruth says, yes, thank you. Because now you mentioned, working with educators who know these topics might be even easier. What I was thinking beforehand when I was listening to you too, when you work with community members, isn't it difficult to reach them, to get them on board because of these sensitive topics which are being touched? How do you get in touch with the communities? Because they need to, be brave enough to actually go on stage and tackle exactly these kind of topics and issues which concern the community. It's about,
My answer is very short. I work with community organizations. I work with people who are already organized. Okay. But when we perform, we may reach others who are not organized. So we've done quite a lot of street theater, played outside shopping malls or in clinics or whatever. Yeah. And then reach others. But the people I'm working with to make the play and tell the story and do the education, they're kind of organized.
Okay. Selina, do you want to react to Astrid's comment, or how do you have, can you tell us some experiences how you reach people from the community? So are they very well organized as well? Are they already there?
These are groups that conduct the so-called Theatre for Development are already organized. So except they lack the education that they need to facilitate the real theatre for development. I think that's where the issue of education comes in here, where maybe these high institutions of learning that offer theatre for development courses can come up with a deliberate programs like non-formal education, because of a need that is there in the communities to train the facilitators of theatre for development so that when they go in the communities, they avoid the top-down approach and come up with the bottom-up approach where community members are being involved. That way, it will help to make the theatrical activities become participatory, and at the end of the day, we'll be able to liberate the people. Because the whole idea of theatre for development is to also leave the skills and knowledge with the community members so that whenever they have issues in the communities, they can be able to mobilize themselves and maybe stage the problems, talk about them, and come up with solutions. So the need for education is there. We need to train the facilitators of theatre for development. Astrid is doing very well, I can see. They are very, they involve the communities, yes, which is very good. But it is the extent to which the facilitators involve these community members, that is very critical here. Yes, we can have, of course, even the experts in certain subject areas. They are also supposed to be educated, because if you know the subject, it doesn't mean that you are the only person who is supposed to talk about it. There are different perceptions concerning the issues, so we need to get those perceptions. And sometimes, you know, the perceptions might not be right, but yours now is to come in and correct the situation, and that's what Theatre for Development is all about. That's where education comes in. The facilitator can also learn from the community members. Community members can learn from the facilitators. It becomes a two-way thing.
Absolutely.
I am looking at the time. I think slowly but surely we're going to be wrapping up. I want to give both of you now for the next few minutes the opportunity to, deliver your final burning issue, something you really want to be telling the participants, and you really want to underline why it is so important to be working on stage, working with theater. Is there something you really want to transport and bring forward here? What we haven't discussed yet?
I think, do you have something, Astrid?
Look, I'm passionate about theatre because I think it's a wonderful way of not just performing, but of rehearsing. And in my experience, because we make, you know, the plays together, we don't come with a ready script, we make the script together. And I think it taps into the creative abilities of people whose life very often is incredibly hard, and their entire life is kind of focused on putting food on the table. Or I used to work with trade unions and workers in that case, who were kind of used for their muscles, for their labor power, and nobody ever acknowledged that they also have creative powers. And it's the same for largely women I'm working with. So I think it's the most wonderful process of just reminding people that being human also means being imaginative, being creative, and that no story is too small to be told, but there must be a very clear purpose. So what I enjoy about making the theatre with them is the exploration of alternatives, of seeing things differently, of trying it out differently. And the making process, I think, is probably the biggest education process. The people who learn most are the people who are making the play and performing the play, and then having to ask questions. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, because they multiply their own learning through their performance in the end. I think for them to experience, to be an actor means to act. It's about agency. It's about activism. And that experience in itself shows that you don't have to sit back and kind of suffer your lot and wait for somebody to rescue you. So you're not waiting for welfare. You're actually taking this life into your own hands, and you striding out and you're doing something about it. And in the process of telling this story, you experience the activism, and you communicate that activism to your audience, especially if you're working in a participatory way and you're asking the audience questions and they respond, and you're asking them for solutions, and then you're pushing them a little bit further. And sometimes you can even go and say, okay, so for example, in one of the TB plays, we had, you know, the masks that people wear. We asked the audience a question: are we wearing the mask to protect you, or are we wearing the mask to protect ourselves? Yeah. And they said, oops, we've never thought about it that way. And then in another scene, we had decorated these masks very beautifully and brightly, etc. And they wore them, and they had a party. And we just distributed decorated masks in the audience, and the audience would walk out into their communities still wearing their masks. Yeah. So it's kind of taking that message a little bit further, because then when people ask them, you know, why you're wearing a mask, so they became actors themselves in a way, and they became spokespeople themselves. A very simple little device. And I think that's the beauty of theatre. Yeah. you know, you can rehearse alternatives that you may not have even thought of, and it makes it safe to try them out at home, in your community, in your home, etc. So that's why we work with theatre. It's a great educational way of being.
And it's really possible to feel how passionate you're about it.
Yeah, I am.
It's lovely to see that. And like, yeah, it is a way of like asking, opening up spaces, asking critical questions, empowering people to, looking at their own situations and lives. It really encourages me now to be going on stage as well. I've never done that before, but yeah, I really enjoyed talking with you about that and learning more about theaters and plays. Selina, before I wrap up and close this webinar, is there something you wanna say, or is everything okay for you the way?
No, I want to say something. Yes. Theatre for development is a tool that we need to use in any development venture that we want to take to the communities, because it is going to open up, you know, the communities so that they can understand the kind of development that is supposed to take place. They can even decide the kind of development that they want. That can only be done through theatre for development, because you are going to know the burning issues that are there. It also promotes what we call ownership. The project will be owned by the people, and it gives power to the people, because they will now be able to have a say in whatever development is taking place. They will be able also to talk about they'll bring out their perceptions on the issues that affect them. So one will be able to know how they perceive certain issues before you take it to them. So theatre for development should actually be taught to those that are concerned, so that they do the research, people get educated, and through entertainment, people will be able now to learn issues of concern and be able to find solutions to their problems. Astrid is doing very well. I'm very impressed. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Ricarda, to discuss theatre for development.
Well, I am the one who's very impressed here. I really enjoyed talking with you two today, this morning, and I thank you so much. Thanks for taking your time and sharing your passion and your knowledge, expertise with me, with all of us. It was really, it was fun. And we also looked at it from a very critical side. I enjoyed this as well. So I'm gonna be closing up this webinar here now. Thanks to you too. Thanks to Sebastian as well, and to the participants. Finally, I just want to say, as mentioned, this webinar took place in the framework of a virtual seminar, which will be running until the end of this week. So you can still be commenting on articles, and of course, reading up the articles and comments at any time. And also for you too, it might be interesting. There was another webinar which already took place in the middle of March. It was on the topic of capacity building of adult teachers for inclusive classrooms. And also there we had a recording. I'm posting the recording of this webinar here in the chat room. So if you're interested and have time, you can watch and re-watch this webinar as well. Yeah, and for the other participants, we will be sending out a short feedback form. So we are looking forward to hear how you enjoyed the webinar, and if there are some areas where we can improve. Yes, and thank you so much. The next webinar will be taking place hopefully very soon. We haven't anything scheduled yet, but we're gonna keep you updated. Thanks to the two speakers. It was really a pleasure. It was fun, and maybe next time we meet on stage.
Ricarda, thank you. May I end with a commercial? If people want to learn more about it, go to www.populareducation, one word, .co.za. And there's quite a lot of their pictures and stories and all kinds of other things.
Okay, I typed it into the chat. I hope it was correct. Yes, thank you so much. Have a lovely day. Have a good Easter for those who are celebrating Easter. And thanks a lot. Talk to you soon again.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Our pleasure.